Hello, and thank you for clicking on my video. Today I'm going to show you just a simple CRUD application. As some of you may be aware, I'm on my software development journey, and I finally graduated from simple HTML static pages to now being able to build full stack, or at least MERN full stack applications with pretty ease. So in this video, I just wanted to show how I created a simple MERN stack app that allows me to create new items into my shoe collection, that allows me to review current items in my shoe collection by price and by collection, that allows me to update by editing and making changes to any item in my shoe collection, and then also with the functionality of hitting delete and removing this item from my database. So if you're like myself, in the process of still learning to get the grasp on how to build full stack applications and just want something quick and simple of how to do so, this is the perfect video. So with that said, I'll go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so as I said in the intro, this is just going to be a simple CRUD application, no CSS, nothing fancy, just the full functionality of a full stack application using a backend database. Um, and I'm going to walk you through the entire process here on this particular video. I know some of this is a little redundant, but again, this is just a way to capture some of the things that I'm doing to have to document my journey, and hopefully it's helping some of you that are particularly in the same situation that I'm in, where you are balancing that work, life, family, all while trying to provide and do some self-improvement as well too. But with that said, we'll go ahead and get started. So once you have Node.js installed on the computer, you can definitely follow along and do the exact same steps I'm doing now as well. But I have the Visual Studio Code up, which is going to be the code editor that I'm using. From there, I'm just going to drag in the folder that's on my desktop that I'm going to load all of my project files in. And from there, I'm going to go up top and make sure that the terminal loads up, and it does point to the CRUD folder, which is great. So here, I want to get started by doing the npm init -y. And then once this installs my package.json, the next thing I want to do is install some of the dependencies that I'm going to need to use. So in this particular application, like I said, nothing fancy, going to be an npm install express, EJS, and mongoose. And hit enter. And while that is going, we'll go ahead and install our primary backend file, which is going to be index.js. This is going to have all of our information that's going to set all of our routes, all of our middleware, and also the dependencies needed to talk to the backend. So while I know this is still going here at the bottom, but the first thing you want to do is just go ahead and start bringing the And as you can see here, we are up and going on port 3050. So great. We are done with the first step of setting this application. Now we'll move on to what's next. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is set up a basic route on the back end. And basically what this is if we go to a URL and we put in a slash or whatever it is, we want to just make sure that the information that we are sending from our Node application or Node backend can go to our front end, or we'll have access to it. Then from there, we'll actually put it with a front end manager like the EJS in this particular tutorial. So, but anyway, first thing we want to do is do an app.get. And slash, and this particular slash is representing the home route. So if you were to do slash, then send and hit enter, or res.send, it'll send something to the basic localhost website or localhost site. But in this particular case, I'm going to set up a route with a backend URL of kicks. some of the kicks, and this is just representing the type of application I'm building. And of course, with this, you always want to do res.send. Send. And for this, just to say it's up and going, I just want to send kicks. So we want to save it, kill the server with Control-C, do a node index. Once it says you're up and going, bring up the page. And for this one, we're going to do localhost 3050/kicks. And we see we got a web page that says kicks. Cool. Okay, so that's our first route. We're going to set up multiple of these. I'm not going to do anything fancy and set up a routes folder in this particular tutorial, because it's not going to be a real in-depth page. It's just going to be a simple CRUD app. So next thing we'll do is we'll set up our MongoDB backend, so that we can begin to build out our models and all of that fun stuff. So thank you.
Hello. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is go to the mongodb.com website. For me, I'm already a user, so if you already have an account, you'll just sign in. If you don't, you can sign up. It's free. Then from there, once you sign in, you'll want to log in with Google. If that's just my preferred way, but of course you can log in with the email address or however you have your account set up with MongoDB. But once you're logged in, what we want to do is we want to create a new cluster. So just for the sake of the video, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll terminate this particular project, and let's set up a brand new one. For this one, I'm going to call it collection, to represent my my shoe collection. And then from there, as far as members, I'm just going to keep the exact same username that's here, which is what I have already set up with MongoDB. So we'll just go create a project, and then from there, it's going to take a few minutes to fully get the cluster set up. Once it's set up, the next thing you want to do is build a database. That's ultimately what we're trying to do. You can pay for database options that have certain amount of storage and read-write capabilities, but for us, something simple, we're just going to go with a free account, and it'll be shared. And then from there, you want to select the region that is closest to you. For me, it's going to be Virginia on the East Coast. You can change the name of the cluster here if you wish. I'm just going to keep it simple. And then once this is done, you click on Create Cluster, and it's going to take you to this particular window. I'm just going to set up a simple username and password for this one. I'm just going to keep it very simple. I wouldn't recommend sharing your information publicly on the web, but because this is just a simple project that I'll be deleting once it is over, I'm just going to keep it simple, and I'm just going to make the password the exact same as the username. We'll go with creating the user there. From here, ideally you would want to set it up to where you can obtain access, or set up this database from any IP address, but for the sake of this video, to keep it simple, I'm just going to go add my current IP address. I'll be deleting this once this is over. And once you click on finish, it is going to take a few minutes to set this up, and while it is in the process of setting up, we're going to minimize this and go back to our app to finish set up our backend. So with that said, I'll go ahead and transition over. Thank you. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is establish our connection between our Node Express app and the MongoDB platform that we just set up. So the first thing we want to do is terminate the server here, and then we want to do a npm install, and we want to install .env. Now, you don't necessarily have to do this, but the reason I'm doing this is just as a best practice to keep myself in the habit of establishing a secure .env file connection, because I will be uploading these, maybe not this one, but the ones I do in the future, to GitHub. I just want to make sure I maintain a certain level of security. So once you've installed the .env, the next thing you want to do is, well, I'm going to copy and paste a little bit of code, and I'll kind of talk through what that code is, but it's basically just standard code that needs to be set up consistently in order to have the Express app talk to MongoDB. Now, this can vary of how you go about it. There's more than one way to skin the cat, so to speak, but for me, because this is something I consistently do, and if you use the MERN connection, you're going to do it as well. It's good to just kind of have some of this stuff already in a place that's pretty handy for you, because you will use it pretty regularly, and you want to spend most of your time building out your front end, making sure your connection is secure, establishing errors and things of that sort. So for what I'm inquiring here, or bringing in I should say, is just the Mongoose connection, which is going to help us connect to Mongoose. We're going to establish a port, which means that we're going to be up on port 5000 for this particular connection. We're going to require the .env file, which I will create in a second, and that's where we're going to store our variable to the MongoDB connection. We created a URI right here, which is going to process.env this particular URI that we're going to create in the .env file. So I'll go ahead and copy this just to make sure I don't have any errors. And then here you just want to establish a simple connection to Mongoose, and then once it's open, what you want to do in the console, we just want to return that the MongoDB connection is established, and that'll make sure that we're connected to the back end, and it'll be the first step in establishing that relationship between the two. So the next thing we want to do is go ahead and bring in a .env file. And then once we have that .env file, I'll go ahead and paste in the Atlas URI. This is just the URI that's going to be exported from this .env file. That's going to go back to the connection here in Mongoose. So the next thing is to go back to the MongoDB platform, and let's grab this particular connection. We'll click on connection. And once you do so, you want to connect to your application using this. And then from here, let's just go ahead and click on copy to copy this string. We can minimize this, and let's go back to MongoDB. Let's just go back to Visual Studio Code in the .env file. And right here, what we want to do is where it says password, we just want to replace this password with what we made our password. So for me, I just made it, to keep it simple, JDUB12. Remember, this is something you want to keep secure. Not everyone should know, but since I will take this down once I'm done, I'm okay with it being displayed. Then from here, just want to click on save. We'll go back to our index.js file. We'll fire up the server node.index, and let's see if we are up and going. Yes, MongoDB connection established successfully. Fantastic. Okay, so the next thing we'll do in the next session is create our model, which is what's going to be the model of the schemas that's going to be in MongoDB. This is where we're going to store our information pertaining to our product, or excuse me, pertaining to our collection or product. In this particular case, it's going to be kicks, our own personal shoe collection. So for the next video, we'll talk through how to build those models so that we can load them into MongoDB and retrieve that information. Okay, so next we want to create our model, which is going to build out how we send data to the database and how we retrieve it. This is the type of information that we want to get back. In this particular case, it's going to represent our shoe model, and this is going to help us keep up with the shoes that we have, the prices of them, and then what type of shoe it is, whether it's a sneaker, a boot, or a flip, a comfort shoe, or whatever type of shoe it is. So first thing we want to do is come over to our main root here and add in a folder called models. Inside of models, let's just add a file called collection.js. You can name it whatever you want for your particular database, but for me, this represents my shoe collection. Inside of that, of course, we want to bring in Mongoose. And from there, we want to build out our very first schema, which is going to represent the framework of the information that we're going to send, that we're asking for the database to store and keep up for us. So we will do a constant, and let's just call this collection schema. And from here, we want to do a new Mongoose model schema. 1 second. Okay, so now what we want to do, now we want to do is establish some of the name of the categories that we want within our schema. So the first thing we'll have is the name of our collection, and this is going to be a string, and of course this is going to be required, and we want to set that to true. Next, we want to have a price so that we can keep up with the price of, or the value of our shoes. Of course, that can change, and so we'll have the ability to edit, and if we sell any shoes, we can delete as well too. But for right now, we're going to, for a price, of course, it's going to be a type of number, and this is absolutely going to be required, so we'll set required to true. And last but not least is category. This is just going to help us be a lot more organized so that we can see what type of shoes that we have, or what type of shoes that we have, or whatever it is that you're storing. So for this is going to be a string, a type of a string, And for the categories, it's going to be enum. And from here, the category names for me are going to be sneaker, boot, or a comfort shoe. And once you have your categories built out, from there what you want to do is you want to establish the constant, which is going to collect all of this information and send it to the back end for you. So for me, I'm going to name it collection, and you want to set it equal to mongoose.model. And it's going to take two arguments within this particular model. So of course, the first one is going to be collection. And then the second thing is going to be the collection schema, which is what we just built up top. And at the bottom, what we want to do is we want to do a module.exports, because we want to be able to use this information in various files. And what you want to export is collection. Back in the index.js file, you just want to bring in that model that you just established. So for right now, it's just going to be const collection, and from here you want to require, and it's going to be /models. So to go up one file and to get to the models folder, and then from there we want to bring in what we call collection. Okay, so now what we want to do is let's start adding some data into the database, and I'll kind of talk through a couple ways to do so. But this is going to bring in that the models that we just built. So now that we can start to establish our models or add data into our database, now that we have a foundation or a framework built. So we'll jump into the next part in the next video. Thanks. All right, so the next thing we want to do now that we have our model built is add some data into the database. There's a few ways you can go about this. One of the ways that I like to use when I'm doing multiple routes is Postman, but because this is just a simple CRUD application, doesn't require a lot of validation and things of that sort, I'm just going to test it directly from the from this particular setup here. So go in the root file, or want to create a new file, a root folder, create a new file called test.js. And from here, I'm just going to copy and paste some information in that's fairly standard. One second. And all this is the exact same information that we have in our index.js file. We're just establishing a quick connection here that represents the same thing that's in the index.js file, but just a way for us to just do some quick testing and to send some information to the database. So the first thing you want to do is, once you bring that information, save it, of course, create a new const here. So I'm just going to call it stuff. And I'm going to make a new collection, which is going to represent that it's going to be the same thing that's being required here from the const that we brought in. And then once you've established the new variable with the new item, we'll just go in and start to give each one of the categories a respective information. So for name, the first thing I want to load in is my Air Force Ones.
And for the price of these, let's just say that it is $140. And for the category, of course, these are sneakers. So all of this information has to match word for word, otherwise it won't work. So I'll just go back up and just make sure that, okay, the category is correct, number true, just to make sure I'm not doing anything wrong. Then once you have this information built, you want to be able to send it or save it in the database. So from here, we'll do a constant of stuff, and we'll use the option of save. And then once it's saved, we want it to do something. And then once it's saved, we want to do stuff, create a quick function here. And what we want it to do is console.log the stuff, just to make sure that we can see it. Doesn't necessarily mean that it was sent to the back end, but it is a good indicator that it was sent. And then if we get an error, we want to do a catch and display the error. And we want to do a console.log to show the error. All right, now, so in order to test this out, we'll need to fire up the this particular portion of the app. So I'll come down to the bottom here and we'll terminate the previous connection, and then we'll do a node, and instead of doing index, we'll do a test, since that's the file we want to run. And it looks like we got a error, so let's see. Oh, duh, I misspelled stuff. That will help. Sorry about that. So let's go back and test, and let's see. Voila, we see our new object that was created right here, the Air Force One, the price, the category. And if we go back to our MongoDB backend, and if we go to browse collections, we should see it listed right here. Okay, perfect. So now that we know that we have information, or that we can send information from our Express app to the back end, let's add in a little more. Let's add in a few more items into our collection. And then from there, we'll kind of talk through how do we get it from the back end to our front end. So more to come. Thank you so much. Okay, so now that we know that we can send test data to the back end and it saves, and we can read it in our console, now we want to add in multiple items into the database so that we can have some information. Some people refer to it as seeding, but for me, it's just adding information to the database. So I'll go ahead and delete this information here. Then from there, I'm going to copy and paste some arrays that I've built out just to kind of add in my sneaker collection. I don't want to bore you with me typing all of this information out, so just give me just a second here. So right here just kind of shows all of the just a few of the sneakers or shoes, excuse me, that I'm going to add to my database. And once you have that information there, you want to grab the array name, and which is collection. And for this, instead of doing a save, which only saves a single item, you could actually do a function with MongoDB called insert many, which is going to allow you to insert multiple items into your database. And you could have done this the other way. You could have went to MongoDB and added it directly as well too. I just like to do it this way, just to kind of test out my connection and make sure everything is working properly. So once you've done that, you want to add the array, and I named it in this particular case add collection. And then once you've added it and it's going to be inserted, you want to return something back. So we're going to do a .den. And you want to, the response we want to get back is, we want to just simply console.log the response, just to make sure we're getting, just to make sure that it's flowing through properly, but we can always check the database. And of course, if we need to make sure we're catching errors as well too, so we'll do a .catch. And from here, what we want to log out is our error. And just to test this out to make sure that it functions properly, we are going to terminate the server. We're going to do a node test to restart it. Give us a second. And as you can see here in the console, it is showing all of the items or shoes that we just added into this particular file. And if we go back to our Mongodb database and we can just refresh the screen right here, you should see these items listed in the database, and we do. We have 7 items now listed in the database. Great. So now that we have some items listed in the database, we know that we have a great connection going from our Express app to the database. The next thing we want to do is start to set up some of our routes so that we can start to access some of the data from the database. So we'll talk about that in the upcoming video. Thank you so much. Okay, so now that we have information in our database, the next thing we want to do is create our first route to make sure that we can access that information from our back end, and then we'll work on sending that information to the front end. So what we want to do in this particular case is do app.get. And I want to call this particular route collection. And then of course we know we have to do some standard stuff here. And what I want to do is I want to create a const of collection, and this is just going to represent grabbing that information from the back end. And because it's not going to be available immediately, this is going to be something that we'll have to await, and we'll have to await collection, which is that model that we required earlier. And what we want to do now is we want to do a find, which is going to find all of the collection. And instead of specifying which particular one, we want to leave an empty array here because we want to find all. And anytime that we have an await, we have to include async, which is just basically telling the route that, hey, we're going to need to make sure that we await some feedback and make sure that we're aligned and in sync. And then from there, we want to do a console.log just to see what we're getting. Oh, this is the wrong one here. Mouse jumped on me. We want to do a console.log just to see what we're getting from the database. And if we're lucky, we want to get a response back of my kicks. All right, so let's go down here to the bottom. Let's terminate our terminal and let's do a node index and see what we get. So we see that we're going on port 3050. Now let's go back to our local host 3050 and let's change the URL from kicks to collection. And we see right here, it says my kicks. So we see that it is sending information to our web browser. And if we look in our console, we see that we have all of our collection items here. So now we want to bring this information to the web page. And of course, we're not going to use React today. We're going to use EJS. So we'll do that in the next video. Thank you. All right. So the next thing we want to do is start to set up our index.html files so that we can start displaying things to the browser. So over in the root folder, let's create a folder called views. And then from there, let's create another folder called collections. And this is just where we're going to store all of our HTML files. And inside of here, the first file we're going to create is index.ejs. And in here, let's just create our standard HTML boilerplate, and we'll just send some test information just to make sure it works. So we'll just put hi there listed here. So now let's go back to the index.js file, and here where we have reds.send, and let's replace that reds.send with reds.render. And in here, what we want to render is collection which is the name of that folder. And then the name of the file we want to render is index. And this is going to make sure that we're rendering this file anytime someone goes to this URL. And because we want to bring in content from the database into this particular index file, we want to grab this variable name, which is collection. Oh, I'm sorry, you gotta put this in. We want to be able to destructure it. I'm sorry, so just put that in brackets. That's why it was erroring on me. And then once we've done that, let's we can just go ahead and remove the console.log. And if we save it and we go to this particular URL, I'm sorry, we got to kill the server and then the server and then restart it. So we'll go node index. So we're going on the port and we have our MongoDB connection established. Let's go back to the site. And if we refresh, we see we're getting hi there. So now what we want to do is we want to start to bring in the data from the database. And in order to do so, we'll need to use the EJS syntax. So if you're not familiar with it, it's okay. I'm not going to spend too much time kind of talking through how exactly it works and all of that good stuff. But what I will do is just kind of talk you through what I do have. And let's see if we can get this up and going. All right. So the next thing we want to do is start to set up our index.html files so that we can start displaying things to the browser. So over in the root folder, let's create a folder called views. And then from there, let's create another folder called collections. And this is just where we're going to store all of our HTML files. And because we want to bring in content from the database into this particular index file, we want to grab this variable name, which is collection. But the server and then restart it. So we'll go node index. So we're going on the port and we have our MongoDB connection established. Let's go back to the site. And if we refresh, we see we're getting hi there. So now what we want to do is we want to start to bring in the data from the database. And in order to do so, we'll need to use the EJS syntax. So if you're not familiar with it, it's okay. I'm not going to spend too much time kind of talking through.
Hey, so now what we want to do is we want to start to establish some of our backend routes so that as we go to different URLs in the browser, we're able to access different information. So the first thing we want to establish is a detail page. And the way this will work is when you're on the main index.js file or on the main home screen with all the product lists or the collection listings rather, you'll be able to click on one of the collection listings and then it'll take you to the page that'll show the listing name, the price, and what category it belongs to, so that you have a better sense of what exactly the last price point is for the item that we've listed. So it'll make a little bit more sense as we start to work through this. But let me go ahead and begin on the route. So just bear with me as I type in some information. So right here, I just wanted to type in some information to make sure that we are gathering the information from the database. So the name of this particular route is going to be collection / and then it's going to be the ID each item or collection or item that's listed within the MongoDB database has a unique identifier. So we're just going to leverage that unique ID. Obviously, it can be a multitude of things, but for simplicity, just going to keep it as the ID. Of course, we are going to have to wait on information. So we know we're going to need to include the await and async option. Of course, this is a rec-res request. And what we want to do here is we want to grab the ID or deconstructure the information from the back end and make sure that we are grabbing the ID, and we're going to grab that by the rec.parms function. And then we want to create a variable named collection, and of course this is going to be a wait because we're going to have to wait on this information from the database. And what we want to do is we want to go to the collection model that we built, and we want to find by ID. This is a MongoDB function, and then of course right here we want to pass in the ID. So before we move forward, just want to do a quick console.log of this just to see what we get. So we're going to do a node and then an index, and we'll give it just a moment. And as you can see, we are up and going successfully on the database. So now what we want to do is we want to create the page that will be displayed when we render out or when we gather this information, or if someone goes to this particular ID. So first thing you want to do is render that information. And I know that we haven't created the page over here just yet, but I want to go ahead and render it now. So I'm going to do a res.render. And what we want to render here is collection, of course, because that's the name of the folder. And I'm going to name the file detail. And this is just going to mean that it's going to show the details of the product that we've clicked on the main home screen. And then from here, we want to pass in the collection, this particular variable, so that it's rendering any of the collection items onto this particular page. We'll go ahead and save it here, and then we'll come over to collection, and we'll do a new file, and we want to call this detail.ejs. And here, just want to create our normal boilerplate information. And right here, what we could do, since we're going to bring in this information and it's going to be unique to the item that we clicked on the main screen, we could just change this to the product name. And the way we want to do that is by doing the EJS syntax. And we want to call it collection.name because we know that that is the name of the information that's within the database. And then from there, we could just create a header for the name itself. So I'll just do an H2, and we'll call this collection name as well. And we'll close it up with the EJS syntax. And then right here, we'll just create a simple little unordered list that's going to show the product information. So right here, or the collection information rather. So right here, we want to have a list item of the collection price. And to clean this up a little bit, we'll just put price right here in front of it, so that it's a little cleaner, and I'll put a $sign there as well. And then the next list item that we want to have listed here is the category, and that's just going to let us know if it's a boot, a shoe, or a sneaker, or a comfort shoe, well, or whatever you name your the categories of your items or collections. Just a second here. And this is just going to be collection.category. Okay, and now from here, we'll just go ahead and we'll save our information, and we'll terminate our server, and then we'll restart it. And let's just go to localhost 3050 /collection. and we see all of our collection items here. So in order to just grab an ID, let's just scroll up. We'll go back to MongoDB just a moment. So now let's test this out by getting a ID from the MongoDB database, and then we should be able to enter it into our URL, our web browser URL right here, and it should give the detail for that particular collection item. So let's go back to MongoDB, and from there let's just grab Jordan 10. Let's remember the price is $350 and it's the category of a sneaker. We'll copy this information. We'll go here, and boom, we see that it brings up the Jordan 10. The price point is $350, and the collection item is a sneaker. Okay, so we see that we have this information listed here, and it is pulling the information correctly from the database. Now what we want to do is we want to be able to go back to the home screen and turn these into links and access this from the home screen so that it dynamically pulls the information for each particular item. So we'll talk about that in the next video, so stay tuned. Okay, so now what we want to do is the main items or collections that are listed on the main screen. We want these to be links, and when you click on this link, it takes you to the detail of the collection. So in order to do so, we'll need to go back into the index.html file. We'll just copy or cut this information because we will need it. This will be the name of the A tag that we create. So if you can give me just a moment, I'll go ahead and type this out. So this should be the correct path, and what this is just saying that when you click on this particular link, this is in the wrong spot. This should be in the I just caught this error myself. This should be in the aref, not in the list item of the link. But basically what this is saying is when you go to this, when you click on this name, it's going to take you to this path, and it should pull in the ID based on the route that we just created. So let's test it out by terminating the server. Let's type in node index, or you can hit the up arrow, and let's just wait until the server fires back up. And it says we're up and going. And if we click on the screen, we refresh, and there it takes us there. Air Force Ones 139 is listed as a sneaker. Stacy Adam is listed as a boot, and the price of it is $100. And our Tim's is listed as a boot. I should change that to category, and the price of it is $250. Okay, so now what we want to do is when we're here, instead of hitting back, we want to create a back or a main page button so that when we click on this, it takes us back to the main page. So give me just a moment. We'll go into our detail.ejs file. Under the list item or unordered list, we'll create an A tag. So give me just a moment, and we'll call it main page, or you can call it whatever you want. But right here is where the magic happens. We'll create the href, and what we want to do is we want to go back to the / collection page. Let's terminate the server here. Hit the up arrow, node.index, and let's go back to our screen. We have a main, and there we go. Let me hit the Nike flip flop. We see that it's a comfort item, and it lists the price of it, and we're able to see the name of it, and we'll go back to the main screen, and there we are. Okay, and if we refresh, all the items are listed here because we're pulling this information dynamically from the database. So we are moving in the right direction. Okay, so in the next section, what we'll do is we'll establish a small form so that we can create new items. And then from there, we won't have to seed or add information into the database manually through MongoDB. We'll just be able to do it from maybe clicking on the button new or something, and then it'll take us to the page. So we'll work on that information in the next video. Thanks. Okay, so now the next step for us is to create a new item from our site that we can add into the database and dynamically, and it will load back onto the main collection item page once we add it. So anytime we add a new route, the first thing we want to do is go into our index.html. And for this particular route, we need to establish the actual page first. And then from there, we'll need to build the form or the inputs and labels onto the page. And then once we grab that information, we'll want to post that information back to the back into our backend database so it can be added into the Mongodb server. And then we want to retrieve it once we go back to our main collection route. So first thing we'll do here is we'll create the page for this for the new collection item. So we'll do an app.get, and we want to make this a /new, of course, and then we'll type in our normal rec and res. I have a typo there. And what we want to do is we want to do a res.render, and this is going to be collection, of course, and the page name will be new. So we'll go ahead and save this particular route. We'll go over to collection and we'll type in the name of the new page will be new.ejs. And within this particular file, let's go ahead and add in our HTML boilerplate. Right here, I'm going to list this as new item or new kick. I'll do new kick. Just to keep it simple. And then from here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to just add in some information. What I've done here is just created a simple form. This particular form, of course, always is going to be a post because you're posting this information to somewhere. The action is going to be collections. This is just the route that's created for it. From here, this is just a simple label. The first label is going to be the name of the shoe or the kick for me. And then, of course, it's going to take in a text input, and it's going to be identified as the name so that when we grab this information from the post route, we're going to store it into the name field in the MongoDB database. The same thing here is going to be price for the kick. Of course, the price is a number. It's identified as the price, and we want to name it as price. And then here, just for to make it easier from a user experience perspective, we'll just list this as placeholder price so that you can see it. So then now that we have the basic form information created, the next thing we want to do is add in our categories so that we can list this under the particular category in the database. So okay, so right here, these are just the option values that you'll see once you go to the main screen, and you can select from. This will kind of keep things in the database. There are other ways to make sure that you're only getting good data into your database, because we know things do happen, mistakes do happen. But because this is just a simple CRUD application, I'm not going to worry about so much of the validation in this particular video, but I will kind of talk through it in future videos to come. And then, of course, from here, the main thing you want to have, as always, is a way to submit the information to the database. So we'll create a simple button, and we'll just put submit here. And then from here, what it'll do is we'll basically just be able to submit this information into the database, and then from there, we'll be able to pull it into our main collection screen that has all of the collection items that are in the database. So let's just terminate the terminal. or the server, excuse me, and let's just make sure that we're getting to this route and getting to this page, and we don't need to do any error or debugging before we move forward. So we'll go ahead and restart our server with a node index, and we see the port is going up. We see we have a successful connection. So for this one, remember we just named the route as /new. And as we can see here, it is going to this particular URL. And here's the information that we just keyed in on our index.ej, in our new.ejs file, so that you can key in the kick name, the kick price, identify what type of what category it belongs to, and then you can hit submit. So the next thing we'll do is we'll go back to the back end, we'll establish our post route, add in some middleware, and then we'll make sure that once we submit on this particular screen, it's going to the console. And then once we take it from the console, we'll worry about adding it to the database. So we'll talk through that in the next video, but thank you so much for continuing to watch, and I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is create a post route that's going to capture this information from the front end, take it through a validation, and then post it into our MongoDB database. So anytime that we are adding a post route or adding any other route, of course we need to go into our index.js file. From here, we'll need to create a, first thing we'll need to do is we'll need to add in the middleware, which is going to basically allow us to grab the information from the front end, identify it, and be able to read it, and then pass it into our database. So because this is just standard information, I already have this this type of stuff already saved into a little convenient notepad. Feel free to do the same thing, but I will go ahead and add it in here. And as you can see, it's just an express a URL encoder, URL encoded, and in order to do so, we want to extend it to true. Just copy and paste that in. It's pretty standard stuff. Anytime that you do a MERN stack application, you'll need to add that type of middleware in order to pass the information through. So what we want to do now is do a app.post. And of course, as I think and type this information in, I'm going to type it all out. Just bear with. Here's our app.post route, and what this is this is just identifying the URL that we're capturing the post from. This is going to match what we keyed in here. And then from here, this is going to be an async. Of course, we're waiting on information. So anytime you have an async, you're going to have a wait, or anytime you want to wait on something, you're going to have an async. Standard stuff, rec res. From there, doing the arrow function, and we want to create a variable for the information that we're getting from the body of this this new.ejs file. So we want to call it collection, which is the model that is looking to capture the product name, the product price, and the category. And then from there, it's going to be a rec.body, of course, because that's the request that's coming from the body of the information. And then once you wait on it, you want to save it into the database. This is just a MongoDB option of new item.save. This particular variable, you want to save it. And then from there, you want to redirect the web page back to collection. And we just want to show the new collection item that we entered into the database just to make sure that it's working. So let's give this a whirl just to make sure that everything is functioning as designed. And then from there, we'll move on to our next section. So we'll terminate the server. We'll do a node index. From there, we'll go ahead and bring up the web page. We see that it came up without an issue. So for this one, let's name it Air Max. I do own a pair of Air Maxes, and I want to say I spent right at $200 for these Air Maxes. And in this case, they're sneakers, and then we'll click submit. And then as we see, it takes us to the detail page of the collection that we just keyed in. And if we go back to the main screen, we see that we have the Air Max item added here. We can hit refresh, and we see that it's still listed there. So boom, that shows that we are able to add in information by going to the new screen the localhost 3050/new. Then from there, we're able to add in information into our database, and then once we add it into the information to the database, it redirects us back to the show the details page. And then once we see the detail page, we're able to go from the detail page to the main screen, and we're able to gather all the collection items that are listed into our database. So great, we are moving in the right direction. We're almost finished. So the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to edit the information, just in case we typed in something wrong, or if the price of the item changes or whatever. So we'll talk about how to add in the edit function in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. See you there. Okay, so as mentioned in the last video, the next thing we want to do is create our edit.ejs form or site, so that when we go to that particular route, it has the site to go to. So we'll go over to our collection views.collection folder, and we'll just create an edit.ejs. And this particular site is going to be very similar to our and once we create our edit.ejs, this particular site is going to be very similar to our new.ejs. So we'll just go ahead and select the screen, and we'll copy and paste this into here. We'll change the title of this to edit.kick, and right here we want to edit the kick. And if you could just bear with me just a moment, I'm going to type in some new code, and I'll kind of talk you through that. Still kind of getting good at talking and typing at the same time, so just bear with me here. So we'll need to add in right here. We'll need to add in the product ID, because remember, the route is going to be based off of collection / the ID of the individual product that we want to edit. And right here, anytime that we're creating, we're going to this particular to route, we just want to designate that it's going to be a put method, or we're going to access the method put. So just a second here. And then of course, we'll be posting this to the back end of the database. So right here, we'll just have the kick name as normal. And then from there, what we want to have is the value of the collection item in the input field, so that it's already there. So we'll just add in. Form created, we want the route to be the collections and then the ID. Of course, this is going to be a put method, and we want to post it to the back end of the database. Here we just copied and pasted the same information. The biggest difference is we added in the value, and this particular value is the value of the collection item that we just pulled in by the ID. Same thing here. This is the price of the collection item that we just pulled in by ID. And then right here, just added in a simple for loop. This particular for loop is designed to pull in the category, and it's designed to loop through all of the categories that we have listed until it finds the selected category, which is listed here. Once it has that, that's what information is going to display, and then we'll be able to see that information. And once we click submit, it should submit to the database. And then once we go back to the main index file, we should see that listed there as well too. So we'll go ahead and test this portion out by doing by creating our backend update put route, and then that should let us know if this edit form is working properly. If not, we'll need to come back and make some adjustments. So we'll work on that in the next video. Okay, so needed to make a couple changes to my form in order to get the information to populate. So let me just show you what I've done so far. Obviously, I was missing my closing arrow for select right here, which is the biggest thing. The second big change I needed to make was right here. Previously, I had a greater than sign. This needs to be a question mark for the method, which is going to tie back to right here. So my apologies for not catching it, but I needed to do some debugging just to make sure I had it all correct. But now that we have that information updated, let's go back to our index.html file. Here we'll need to make sure that this is categories and not category. The reason being is because we want to loop through our categories. So I'll just create a const right here of categories, and we'll set it equal to the name of the categories that we listed previously. So for me, it's sneaker, it is boot, and right here we're going to have comfort. Okay, so now that we have the categories, this particular get route, when we go to the edit screen, we'll be looping through the categories variable that I created with the items listed in it. Then from there, it'll select the correct one based on the ID and what category that we have listed. Then we can make changes to the form, which will update to the database, and that is what we're going to create now. So the next thing we're going to create is the put route, and this is just going to let us put the information that we're updating on the form into the database. So just give me just a moment while I type this in. So just created a simple put route. It's going to put it based on the ID. Of course, this is just helping us grab the information from MongoDB by the ID itself. And this is going to give us the option to find an update on this particular route. And here, instead of doing a res.render, we want to redirect you back to the detail page. And we could have did it by detail, but right here, because things could change, we did a temporal literal, which is basically going to allow us to bring in the exact information that we're looking for. So we're going to go with the path of collection/collection.id, which is going to be, well, collection ID, excuse me, which is the detail page that we want to redirect to, because we were editing the individual item that's in our database. So before we move forward, we'll just go ahead and save this. We will get rid of our server. We'll relaunch it with a Control-C, and we'll relaunch it with a node.index. And from here, everything is up and going. Just make sure, yes, and we'll refresh the screen just to make sure. We'll click on Air Force One. Once we click on Air Force One, we'll need to go to edit, and we'll go through, create an edit button so we don't have to type this in manually. And we see that it takes us to the screen. Now it is rendering out the category of the Air Force One. So if we were to change these, and let's just say the value increases, now a new popular shoe to $200, and for whatever reason, instead of it being a sneaker, we'll make it a boot. And it's saying that it cannot post this information. Okay, so we see that we're getting the error message of cannot post. And now that I think about it, I'm willing to bet I did not install the middleware for this. So let me terminate the server, and let's do a npm install. And this particular install is going to be for the middleware, which is going to allow us to update the information that's already in the database. So we would want to install a method called method override, and it's going to do exactly what it sounds like it will do. Is it's going to override the information that's in the database, and it's going to allow us to update it. So we'll do an npm install method override, and while it is installing, I do have this information already saved so I don't have to retype it in. Again, this is standard Express information, so we'll include the middleware listed there, and up top we'll go ahead and create a constant with this particular requiring this particular override. So now we'll click on save. We'll do a node index, and we're up and going again. So let's go back, and let's just go back to the main page. Let's click on the Nike flip-flop. Let's just go to the edit screen. We see that that's working. The value on these have gone from $30 to $50. Let's click submit, and it cannot put. So let's take a look at what's going on. So right here, what we want to build in is, because we are grabbing this information by the ID, we want to get the information that's actually being updated. So we want to include a rec.body, and then from here we want to run validators. We want this to be true, and we want to include new true here as well too. So let's save this. Now let's give it a try. Terminating the server. Let's go back with a node.index, and it says we're successfully going. So let's launch our site. Let's go back here. We'll just go to main. We'll try boat shoe, one of my favorites. Let's go to edit, and the price of our boat shoes have decreased. We got some mud on them one day. But we're still getting cannot put. Let me just triple check myself right here. All of this looks good. Let me look at my form. Relatively good. Okay, there's an S that shouldn't be here. Let me remove that S. And let's terminate it, and let's restart. And now that we're up and going, let's go back. Let's refresh. Yes, we're going. So let's go back to where do we go? Boat shoes. Let's go to edit. My boat shoes have decreased in value from $70 to $50, and they're no longer comfort. Let's call them a boot. Let's submit. Hey, and it updated boat shoe to $50 and a boot. So let's go back to the main screen. Boat shoe, yeah, $50 and boot. We're good to go. All right, so now let's add in the next video, we'll add in the backlink. We'll add in a delete option. We'll make sure that the CRUD app is fully functional, and that'll be all for today. So thanks for hanging in there with me. I'll see you in the next video. Okay, so we are at the last stages of our application. So I just want to add some little small details to help this function a lot easier for us. So let's do this. Before we add in the delete feature, let's go to our new screen. And on the new screen, we want to be able to add in new products. So right here, just below the form, we'll add in a href. And inside of it, we'll just add new kick rather, for me. And the path for it is going to be collection/new. And we'll save it, and then we'll test this out in just a moment. And this should take us to the well, this isn't where we want it. We don't want it on the new screen. We want it on the main index screen. Duh. So let's go to the main index screen, and right up under the list item, we want to be able to add new, which will take us to the new EJS screen. Then from there, let's go to detail. And in detail, we have main, which is going to take us to all products. So here we want to be able to edit. Remember, we want to be able to edit from the show screen. So give me just a moment. Call it edit collection, and we'll do an href to just a moment. just have to pay attention to the EJS syntax. Can be have to pay very close attention to it because I'm getting better with it, but not that familiar with it. And then also on this particular screen, let's just create a cancel option. Let's just say we change our mind and we no longer want to make any changes. So we'll just create a cancel right beneath it. Gonna be very simple. Remember, for this one, all we need is just to go back to the actual ID page without the edit option. So we'll just go to we'll just type in cancel. Okay, and let's just terminate our server. Index. We can go to new. Okay, so just going back to this, let's see, I can't get to that screen. And for new, oh, it's just /new. Sorry, not collection new, but just /new. So let's remove that. Let's go back to our server here. Let's restart it first, Jason. And once we restart it, it's connected. And uh-oh. One moment. Okay, so that's just showing what I console.log previously. So we can see main, edit, cancel. Edit works just fine. We'll need to add a back button here, which is no problem. Let's go back to the main collection screen because I want to test out the new. Okay, so the new kick is working now. And if I remember correctly, we do have main, edit. So let's go to edit. We'll need to add a cancel here. We can remove edit, or excuse me, cancel from this window. Well, no, we can go cancel, which would nope, we need to go cancel, which should take us back to main. And then it looks like edit works just fine. Okay, so let's just make these minor changes. So let's move this so we have that situated. On the edit screen, we are good to go. The detail screen, let's just remove this cancel. And instead of pointing back there, let's just point back to /new. I think that makes a little more sense to point back to the new screen. So if we hit cancel, we'll go to new. And from new, let's create a back button. Actually, you know what? We can just copy and paste the same main that we have to make sure there are no concerns. And instead of it being new, go to cancel. I mean collection. New. Okay, now let's test this out. Let's just terminate it, restart. And it is up and going. And let's go to main screen. We can go to new and go to the main page. If we click on the sneaker, we can click on edit. And from here, so now on the edit screen, let's move this. Let's go to cancel. Let's bring this back from here, because you can already get to the main screen there. So let's remove this from here and let's put it in edit. And let's terminate. We go at it. Sorry here. Just want to make sure I get this right. Cancel. Takes us back to home. Perfect. Edit. Edit screen we know works. New kick. Takes us to add a kick. Okay, so the only other thing we have left to do at this point is bring, from a CRUD application perspective, is to create the delete option. So delete will need to be on the within the item itself. This is going to This is going to allow us to delete the kick out of the database and redirect us back to the home screen. So now that we have the other functionality buttons included in the CRUD app, last but not least, let's add the delete function. So delete will go in the detail page, which is where you're going to have the individual item listed itself. For this, we'll just create a simple form. So give me just a moment. I'll type in some information here and then I'll walk you through it as normal. Form functionality. The action is you want to go to this particular route, and of course it's looking at the ID, and this is going to be the method of delete, so we have that listed here, and then of course the method we wanted to post back to the database. So now that we have this created, and we did it a little backwards than what I normally have done, let's go back into our index.js file and let's create the route for the delete. Okay, so as normal, this is just a basic route. We want to use the app.get feature. You want to get the collection, and of course you want to get the detailed item. This is going to be a async await function, and then from there we'll just create a variable that's going to look up the collection, find it by the ID, and give us the functionality to delete. We're going to delete the ID, and then we want to redirect back to the home route, which is /collection. So we'll save, we'll terminate the server, we'll restart it, and now that we see everything up and going, we'll go back to the main app. We'll refresh. Yes, it looks like we're going. If we click on delete, we see that it's deleted. We'll try one more time. We see the Air Max here, one of my new items. We have the delete button, and once we hit delete, we no longer see Air Max. But if we click on new, we'll type in Air Max. The price on these, we'll just say $250. It's a sneaker. We'll hit submit. And if we go back to the main screen, we see the detail screen listed here. If we go back to the main screen, voila, we have our Air Max. Okay, so thank you for your time and attention. I know that this is not a very sophisticated app, just one of my very first stabs at creating a MERN stack application, just kind of basically off of my own of reading and learning. Still brand new with this, so any feedback, constructive, let's just keep it professional and constructive. Feel free to list it in the comment section. I'm all ears and I'm looking to get better. I'll do more of these that'll be a little more sophisticated and can be more what you can use in the real world if you're doing something for a client. So thank you for some time and checking out one of my simple apps on my journey of becoming a software developer. Feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you for your time, and you have a good day.